In this video, I'm going to show you another part of Photoshop that you will use quite often, and that is the Layers panel. Now, one of the powerful things about Photoshop is its ability to work with layers, and you can think of layers as laying down different pieces of construction paper on top of one another. So let's say you had a blue piece of construction paper and you put it down on your desk. That would be the bottom layer. And then say you took a red piece of construction paper and you cut out the letter A and you laid that on top. That would be another layer. And depending on how you move those layers on top of each other is the same way that Photoshop works. So if you had a big piece of construction paper on the bottom and the letter A on top, you would see that blue background and then the red letter A. However, if you were to take that red A and put it underneath the construction paper, you wouldn't see the letter A because that layer would be covering it up. So let's just take a look at how that works. In the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see the Layers panel. And you can see that we have a layer selected that is automatically generated when we create a new document, and it's called background, and it shows an icon of what we're seeing, which is this white background. There's also a lock button here, which means this layer is currently locked down and a new background layer always gets locked so that you can't edit it or manipulate it on accident. Now let's say we do want to edit or change this background layer. Well, all we have to do is double click and it will open up the new layer options. Now we can give this a name, so we can call it layer 0, or we can just rename it background if we would like. There's some other options here, but we won't worry about these right now. Just go ahead and click the OK button. And now we've renamed that background. We could have called it something else and it would change the name. However, we just went and called it background again. And it's got rid of that lock sign. And now we can actually manipulate and edit this background. So for instance, I can pick the marquee selection tool and I can move that out. When I do, you can see we've removed the layer and whatever is underneath is transparency, which means there's not actually anything there. And we see that by this checkerboard pattern. So whenever you see checkerboard pattern, remember that's transparency. It's not actually anything. It's not a pattern is there. It actually means that there's nothing there. So we'll go ahead and we'll undo that. And we'll hit Control D to deselect that selection. Let's go ahead and fill this background layer in using the construction paper example that we talked about. So go to the top and hit Edit, and then go down to Fill. Click on that and change the contents to a color because we're actually going to give it a color. So select color and then pick a blue color. You do that by using this slider here to change colors, and then click out in the open area, and you can see as I move that around it changes our colors for us, and just pick maybe a darker blue color. So mine's right here, and if you move the slider again you can see that color changes, and the preview is this window where it says new. Once you get a dark blue color selected, hit OK, and then we're going to fill that in and hit OK again. And now it has filled in that background layer with the color blue. And you can see that in our preview option in the Layers panel, it's also blue. Now we can go ahead and just double click on the name and rename this. So let's just call this layer blue. So now I've renamed that layer to blue, or we could double click on it and call it blue background. And let's add in another layer. Now there's a couple different ways that you can do that. You can go down to the options in the bottom and click the new layer icon. So when I click that, a new layer is added. It's called layer 1. There's nothing on it, so we don't see any changes. And it's got the checkerboard pattern on it. So if I hide the blue background with this eyeball right here, you can see the checkerboard pattern, and we have layer 1 selected. So anything we made would happen on this layer. So if we went and we grabbed our paintbrush, and let's go and pick just a regular paintbrush here, and then we're drawing on that layer. When I let go, you can see the preview update with the drawing that we made. If we click on that eyeball again to bring back in the blue background, you can see that we see the blue background in the back, and then we see the layer 1 with transparency and just that drawing sitting on top. Now we can hide that layer and bring it back again. And with that layer selected, you can keep drawing. So we can add to this as much as we want, and it's on its own layer. We're actually not affecting the blue background, because if we want to hide this layer, we can hide it or we can delete it. However, if we were to show this layer, but we had blue background selected, so I'm going to go ahead and select blue background, and I'm going to start painting. Even though it might look like I'm painting on layer 1, I'm actually painting on the blue background, and that could be a problem later on. It might be something you want, or it could be a problem. So let me hide layer 1, and you can see that we've actually edited the blue background, and you might not want that. You might want to keep the background the same. So let's go ahead and undo those options. Just make sure that you always select the layer you want to edit on. So if I want to paint more black at the bottom, but I don't want to affect the actual background, I need to make sure I have layer 1 selected, and then I can paint down there. And then when I hide it, you can see it goes away because it's part of that layer. Now I can also delete this layer. I can click and drag and move it down into the trash can at the bottom. I'll undo that. Or I can select it and then just hit the trash can button, and it'll ask me, do I want to delete the layer? And I can hit yes. I can undo that. Or with it selected, I can hit the delete button on the keyboard, and it'll automatically delete that out for me too. Another way to create a new layer is some of the tools will actually automatically create layers for you. So for instance, the type tool will create a new type layer. It's a different type of layer that can be edited knowing that it's actually type. So if I select the type tool, and I'm going to go ahead and pick a color at the top. So it's black right now. Let's go ahead and pick a brighter red color so we can see it. And then let's go ahead and make the point size a little bit larger because it's going to be hard to see. We'll do 48 point, and we can keep everything else the same. And we're just going to click out in the middle of the document. I'm just going to change it to hello. And now I'm going to go ahead and select my move tool just so we don't see the type options anymore. And you can see it created a new layer called a type layer in our layers panel. It actually named it whatever we typed in. So because we wrote hello, it called it hello. So now this type layer is sitting on top of the background layer. And if I have my move tool, I can actually click and select and move this around. I don't have to use a selection tool because it's its own type layer. I can just click and move. And as you can see, when I move it around, some of these lines start popping up. These are guidelines to help tell you where the center of the document is or to help you line up other things. So let's say we want to go ahead and edit that type. Well, we can do that. We can go back to the type tool. And if we click in the middle of that word there, it gives us our type options back at the top. Let's say we want to make it bigger. Well, we can't just change the size. We have to select it all first. So just like any type of Word document, you can just click and drag and highlight, and then go to the top and punch in a new size. So that was 72. Maybe we need to go higher, but you can see it only goes up to 72. Well, you can type in any number you want. So I can hit 200, and it'll make it 200 point type. And let's say we want to center justify this. So it's left justified right now. Let's go ahead and pick the center. So now we're back in the center of the document. I'll pick the move tool, and then I'll move it and make sure we're centered back up here. So now we can see we have our red hello layer on top of our blue background. In the example I told you earlier, if this was construction paper and I put the blue piece of construction paper over the hello, the red text, then you wouldn't see that. So if I go down to the blue background, you can click and drag these layers around and reorder them, and it'll actually reorder the way that you see them. So if I click on blue background and I hold down and I move it up, you can see I'm actually moving that background now. My hand changes, and I can move it until I see a blue line that's above the hello type. So once I see that, I'm going to drop it, and I've dropped that background on top of the type layer. So now the type layer is being hidden because this is actually covering it up. If I hide the blue background, you can see that the type is still there. I'm just laying a sheet of paper that's completely covering that type up. So for instance, I could do something like I could go to the eraser tool, and we have a circle erase. We know the type is somewhere right here. So if I erase that layer, you can see that I erased some of the blue background and revealed that type underneath. So if I hide the blue background, there's my type. If I bring it back, you can see what I erased. And if I hide the type layer, you can see just the blue background, as if I took scissors and say, cut this out. So I'm going to undo those. Let's get back to where we were. I'm just going to keep hitting Control Z or Command Z. So now let's go back to the type, and we'll grab that and we'll move that back on top. So now it's sitting on top. Let's add in another layer. You can add in a shape layer. So you have your selection marquee, your rectangular marquee selection tool at the top, but this rectangle down here is actually a shape. So this is the rectangle tool. You can see we have rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, line, and custom shape. Let's just pick, let's do a custom shape tool. We'll make it a little more interesting. Or let's do a polygon tool. So we'll select polygon. You can see at the options at the top that we have a fill and a stroke and how big the stroke is, and then you can see how many sides. Let's change the sides to, let's just say, an 8-sided polygon, and let's change the fill color. This is going to be the color that it is actually going to be for the polygon. So you can click on that, and then you can click the little color window here to bring up your color picker and select it like we did before, or you can just go ahead and select one of these colors here. So I'm just going to say pick this orange color. So I've selected that and changed my fill to orange. That's what the shape color will be, and it's an 8-sided shape. So if I click out in this document and I drag, you can see it creates a polygon for us. So let me select the move tool so you can see what's going on here. And it created a new polygon layer inside of the layers panel. That polygon layer is sitting on top of the hello layer, and the hello layer or the type layer is sitting on top of the blue background layer. So based on the way that these are ordered is the way that you'll see them ordered on the screen. Because the polygon layer is on top, it's actually over everything else. And then the hello layer or the type layer is underneath the polygon but above the blue background, and that's what we see. And then the blue background is in the back. Let's say we want to have the polygon layer in between the hello and the blue background. So we want the polygon behind the hello and the hello to sit on top. Well, then we just click and drag, and we can reorder that layer. We can also manipulate this layer underneath just like we would do before. So if I select the move tool, I can click and move that. And then now we have our blue background layer, and then we have our polygon layer in the middle, and then we have our type layer, the hello layer, sitting on top. So that's a nice, easy way for you to organize and use layers, and you can delete them out. And they have some options that you can change. You can actually search by different types of layers. So if I click on this T here for type, it'll show me just the type layers, which is that hello layer. So that's really nice. If I click it again, it'll deselect, and now I see everything. So you can select by different types of layers. You have those at the top here. And then we have different blending modes. We have the opacity, so we can actually change how transparent this type layer is. If we want to make it less transparent, we can do that. We have different options. So if we do want to go ahead and lock down this type layer, we can actually do that by clicking this lock icon here. And now what happens is I can't move that layer. It's actually going to drag the layer underneath because I can't select the hello layer. If I undo that and I lock down the polygon layer with that lock, now I can't select either one, and it's going to drag the background layer because it's the only thing left. So we'll go ahead and lock that down. Now I can't accidentally select anything. It won't let me pick and choose anything at all because all of the layers have been locked. So let's go ahead and unlock those. Then we have some other options at the top. We have different ways to add styling and masks and effects and all these different options at the bottom, creating a new layer and deleting layers. So some of these, like this effects, you can do things like glows and shadows and overlays. And then there's some image adjustments that you can do, such as brightness and contrast and changing the hue and saturation and so forth. Then there's a mask button if you want to add in a mask. And then there's also a little folder here, and this is for creating a layer group. So if I click on that folder it's going to drop in this group icon here, and I can click and drag that wherever I want. Let's put it at the top. Now, right now, nothing is inside of it, so if I hide it or show it, you see nothing happen. However, if I click and hold down on a layer and I drag it into that, instead of going to the line above it, but I actually go into that group, you can see it highlights the whole box there, and I let go. It has actually placed that type layer inside of this group. So now I can collapse this folder. I don't have to see the type layer, but it's inside this folder. It's inside this group. If I hide the group, you can see that it goes away. So let me open that back up, and you can see it there. So when I hide this, it hides that type layer. So you can create groups of layers. Let's say we want the hello and the polygon to be together all the time. Whenever we manipulate them, they manipulate together. I can click and hold the polygon layer, drag that up into the group and let go. And then it has put that in the group also. But it reorganized it. You can see it put it on top of the hello layer, and that's not what we want. So inside of the group, I'm going to click on the type layer. I'm going to hold down, and I'm going to move it above the polygon layer. But as you can see, it's indented because it's in this group. If I collapse a folder, you don't see them, but they're in there. They're inside that group. If I hide the whole folder, both of them go away. So I'm going to show this again, expand it, and I'm going to hide them. And then you can see they get hidden, and I can show it. If I want to hide individual ones, I can still do that also here. But now we've created a group. So this is really great because I can manipulate this group together. Let's say I want to make this smaller. I can go up to Edit, I can go to Transform, and I can go to Scale. And I'm going to scale this whole group. So I'm going to grab a corner and bring it down. And I want to do it from the center, so I'm going to hold Alt or Option, and it'll scale this to the center. So I can let go. And then to save that, I'll just hit the Enter button on the keyboard, and it saved that out. But what it did was it scaled the group for me and anything in that group. So because both of these were in that group, that folder, I was able to scale them individually. So that is how you can work with layers, manipulate them, move them around. You can show different transparency, you can group them together, and you can do all kinds of different things within layers inside of Photoshop. But hopefully that gives you a good beginner understanding of how they actually work.